Hello students, we have completed 5 stanzas of the poem The Last Ride Together by Robert Browning. Up till now we have completed the 5. Now I am going to take up from the 6th stanza onwards. So here is the 6th stanza, and if we look at this stanza, it also involves the poet's expression of philosophical ideas. The narrator says, "What hand and brain went ever paired? What heart alike conceived and dared? What act proved all its thought had been? What will but felt the fleshly screen? We ride, and I see her bosom heave." So now in these lines, the lover is giving arguments in support of his present status. He says that in this world there are very few examples of such things in which hand and brain were perfectly paired. That means action and thought are not necessarily always the same. He says there are very few examples when what one wants to do, what one desires to do, the body supports in doing that. Continuing the same vein, he says, "What heart alike conceived and dared?" We in our heart conceive so many ideas, think about so many plans, make so many plans, but very few of us have the dare, have the courage to materialize those dreams. What act proved all its thought had been? And similarly, whatever actions take place in this world, they are not at all matched to the gravity of thought that has been put into practice for working. That means the actions take place involving very little of that thought which was conceived before that action. And he says, likewise, he says that he has never heard of anyone expressing the true feelings of the heart. So he, on the whole, he simply wants to say, and he gives you the reason in the 5th question that he asks, or rather the 4th question that he asks, what will but felt the fleshly screen? That we have so many desires, but they remain, most of them remain unfulfilled because there is the barrier of this fleshly screen. Fleshly screen here stands for the body. See, we have so many desires. We want to, most of us want to fly in the air, or we want to dive and just be underwater, but it's not possible. Why? Because human body does not allow this. So he says this world is like that. Here we desire so many things, we think about so many plans, but when it comes to execution, very little portion of that gets executed. So he further says, "We ride, and I see her bosom heave." At least here he convinces himself that at least he is here in the company of his beloved, and he can very much feel the movement of his body, his chest heaving up and down, just as she is breathing. He could feel the movement of her chest. So at least he is very much enjoying the company of his beloved. There's many a crown for who can reach 10 lines, a statesman life in each. Now he is giving, you can say, comparisons about his status and that with the others. And we can say that he is trying to justify his position. He says, "There is many a crown for who can reach." There are a great number of goals. There are a great number of things in this world which can be achieved, but very few can do it. 10 lines, a statesman life in each. He says a statesman throughout his life works for the betterment of the nation, but what he gets in the end, 10 lines as obituary, nothing else. The flag stuck on a heap of bones, a soldier's doing. If we talk about a soldier, all through his life he is struggling for the safety of his country, and very often he dies in this you can say task, and what he gets in the end, he gets his body covered with the flag. What atones? He says, he's just mocking at these things. He says these are the kind of atonements, these are the kinds of thing one gets paid back for his or her actions. They scratch his name on the abbey stones. My writing is better by their leave. He says these statesmen, these soldiers who laid down their lives for the betterment of the country or for the safety of the country, what do they get in the end? Only a few lines, that too written on their tombs. Now, Abbey stones, Westminster Abbey, the greatest graveyard where most of the literary figures of British literature have been buried. So he's quoting that. He says, these people who worked so hard for the betterment of the country finally get a few lines, that too after death, scratched on their tombstones. So if in the end, towards the end of the paragraph, he says if he compares his life, his present status with these people, my writing is better. At least he is in a better position because he is riding at present in the company by their leave. He says, if I compare my lot with them, at least I am better, for I am riding in the company of my beloved. So throughout the stanza, you can very well see that he is trying to justify his position. See, he is very much clear of his status that he will not be having the company of his beloved forever. But at least he says that he is happy than most of the people because at least he is enjoying the present status and he is enjoying the company of his beloved, and both of them are riding together. Let's proceed further. What does it all mean, poet? Well, your brains beat into rhythm. You tell what we felt only. You expressed. You hold things beautiful the best and paste them in rhyme, so side by side. Now he compares himself with a poet. He says, a poet actually applies his brain, applies his mental faculty, and creates beautiful rhythms. A poet who has got, you can say, better sensibilities, he is able to express what we common people feel. And not only he has the power to express those feelings, but also he makes them beautiful as best as possible. And then he just makes beautiful rhythms, beautiful rhymes out of that. Beautiful poems are created from common life situations. Side by side, it's the creation of the poet. The poet has the ability to create great rhymes, beautiful rhymes, expressing the common life, common man's life's experiences. Because the poet is only the gifted one who can do so. It's something, nay, it's much. But then, have you yourself what's best for men? He says it's something unusual. It's not common. Poets are not common people. Naturally, they are doing something unusual, and it's much. It's a very great task, and they are aware of what is best for men. That is what they are expressing in their poetry. As I told you earlier in the previous lines, he is saying that these poets have the power to create the best out of the common people's experiences. But he raises one question. He says, have you yourself what's best for men? Do these people do these poets who actually create beautiful rhymes out of these things, out of the commonplace things, do they have the best? And we all know the answer. No. They, most of the time, they merely make a very, you can say, that much amount. They are able to get only that much amount which will keep their heart and body together. Are you poor, sick, old, ere your time, nearer one with your own sublime? He says, the poet grows poor, sick, and old, and that too prematurely. He knows what is sublime, what is the best, but he is never able to get that best. His own beautiful findings a bit more than others, like the lover who never write a poem. He says, I have never done, we who never have turned a rhyme. He says, people like me who are in love, like I am a lover, but I haven't created a rhyme. Still, I am having my sublime, and my sublime was, my greatest achievement was to have the company of my beloved, and I have that. But you, O poets, who have up all through your life been busy in creating what's best for humanity, they have never been able to get themselves even a portion of that. Sing, riding's a joy for me, I ride. He says, for me, singing and riding is a joy. It's a pure bliss for me, and I am having that because here I am in the company of my beloved, and nothing else matters for him. So in this stanza also, the poet is justifying his position and is very happy with his lot, because he feels that poets who are considered, you can say, one of the greatest people among humanity, because they have a keen sense of everything, even he is better than them. Because though they create beautiful things, though they create beautiful rhymes, still they are never able to achieve that thing in their lives. But he himself has been able to achieve what he wanted, and that was the company of his beloved, and he is riding with her. So this is his greatest achievement, and he is happy for that. Proceeding towards the next one, he is continuing in the same vein. He is comparing his fate, his lot with others, and he is just trying to justify his position. So here again, in this paragraph also, he is doing the same thing. He says, and you, great sculptor, so you gave a score of years to art, her slave, and that's your Venus, whence we turn to yonder girl that folds the bow. In these lines, the focus of the lover shifts to a sculptor. The narrator says that sculptor gave 20, a score stands for 20 years. He says a sculptor gave 20 years to art, and thereby he became the slave of arts. The statue the sculptor makes is like Venus. I hope you know who Venus is. Venus is the Roman goddess of beauty, art and knowledge. So he says, with a lot of practice, finally the sculptor is able to create the statue of Venus. No doubt the statue will be very beautiful, but to common people like he himself, the lover, a mortal girl with flesh and blood holds more charm than the sculptor's creation. He says, the moment one looks a girl in flesh and blood, he will just have his focus shifted from the statue of Venus to that girl. You acquiesce, and shall I repine? He says, it's your achievement, and I'm not going to repine. I'm not I'm not sorry for what I have. I'm very happy with that. Now he's again continuing in the same vein. He's now comparing his lot with that of a musician. He says, "What man of music, you grown grey, with notes and nothing else to say? Is this your sole praise from a friend? Greatly his operas, strains intent. Put in music, we know how fashions end." He says, the music composer spends all his life making notes and nothing else. And what he gets in the end? He receives some praise from his friends. Probably his music hits the deck in the opera. But the lover says, we all know how musical trends grow outdated, how soon they go out of the fashion. And that's why the success of that musician is very short-lived. So he considers his life better than them, because at least he is having the company of his beloved here. He says, I gave my youth, but we ride in fine. He says, though also I also gave my youth, I also spent my youth in wooing my beloved, but at least I am happy that I have her company and we both are riding, and it's fine for me. I'm okay with this. So in this stanza also, the poet is comparing himself with a sculptor and a musician, and he somehow he knows that he has to prove himself the better than them. So he is giving all sorts of arguments. For the sculptor, he says, a sculptor throughout his life may work very hard, and finally he may be able to create a beautiful statue of the goddess Venus. But people are, you can say, too much attracted towards the bodily attraction of a person, that as soon as they have a chance to lay their eyes upon a human girl, they'll shift their focus from the one sculpted by that sculpture. Similarly, a musician who spends most of the part of his life in creating great symphonies is even not able to hold the attention of the public for long, because fashions end very soon. People get bored, people get tired of the present symphonies. So he says, at least he is better than them, because he wooed his beloved in his youth and he is enjoying her company, and both of them are riding together. So that's all for today. We are going to take the poem further tomorrow in the next video.